Late night delivery. It was just another late night delivery order from my favorite spot, Joe's Pizza in downtown Seattle. I had just settled into my small but cozy apartment on Capitol Hill, exhausted from a long day at the office. The rain was tapping gently against my window, a soothing soundtrack as I lounged on my couch. My roommate, Emma, had gone out for drinks with friends, leaving me alone with nothing but my thoughts and a craving for pepperoni pizza. The warmth of my living room and the aroma of the pizza I was eagerly awaiting seemed to promise a peaceful end to an otherwise grueling day. An hour had passed since I placed my order, and my anticipation turned into frustration. I called Joe's Pizza, and the manager apologized, saying that the delivery driver had encountered some issues but assured me my food would arrive soon. I couldn't shake a growing sense of unease as I glanced at the clock. The streets were almost deserted, and the occasional car that drove by seemed like a distant echo in the rainy night. Emma's absence began to feel heavier, and the cozy comfort of my apartment suddenly seemed more isolated. Just as I started to worry, my phone rang. It wasn't Joe's Pizza, but an unfamiliar number. Hesitant but curious, I answered, and a gruff voice on the other end simply said, "I have your pizza." My confusion quickly turned to concern, as the voice didn't sound like the friendly tone of a delivery driver. I asked for more details, but the caller hung up abruptly. I tried calling back, but the number was no longer in service. A shiver ran down my spine, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rainy weather outside. Just when I started to consider canceling the order, a knock on the door startled me. I hesitated before opening it, peeking through the peephole. To my relief, it was indeed the delivery driver, looking somewhat disheveled, but with the pizza in hand. I paid him quickly, noticing how he avoided eye contact and seemed in a hurry to leave. As I closed the door, I realized he hadn't even offered a receipt, which struck me as odd but didn't dwell on it too much. I just wanted to enjoy my meal and forget about the strange phone call. I set the pizza box on the kitchen counter, and as I opened it, noticed something strange. The box was unusually warm, even for a freshly delivered pizza, and there was an odd, unfamiliar smell wafting out of it. Instead of the usual pepperoni and cheese, there was a disturbing note scribbled on a piece of paper inside. "You shouldn't have answered." My heart raced, and I stared at the note, trying to make sense of it. The pizza was not what I had ordered, and the note only deepened my sense of dread. In my panic, I tossed the pizza aside and grabbed my phone to call the police. As I searched for the number, I heard a soft scratching sound coming from the kitchen window. I froze, straining to listen. The sound was faint but persistent, like something, or someone, was trying to get in. My hands shook as I approached the window and saw nothing but the reflection of the rainy night outside. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, a sense of paranoia creeping into every corner of my mind. My anxiety reached a peak when I noticed that the streetlights outside had gone out one by one, plunging my apartment into near darkness. The only light came from the intermittent flash of lightning. I kept glancing out the window, my fear growing with each passing minute. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the occasional roll of thunder. I felt a deep unease, as if someone was observing me through the darkness, hiding just beyond the edge of my vision. Suddenly the doorbell rang, shattering the silence and making my heart leap into my throat. I was hesitant to answer, but curiosity and fear drove me to the peephole once more. To my dismay, there was no one in sight, only the empty hallway illuminated by the faintest glow of emergency lights. My initial relief quickly turned to dread as I saw a package lying on the doormat, a note attached that read, "Next time, you won't be so lucky." The fear I felt was overwhelming, and I was paralyzed with uncertainty about whether or not to open it. With trembling hands, I retrieved the package and carried it to the kitchen. Inside, I found a small black box. I took a deep breath and carefully opened it, only to find a photograph of myself taken through the window of my apartment. The photo was clearly taken earlier that evening, and the realization that someone had been watching me all along sent me into a frenzy. I felt a cold sweat on my brow as I tried to piece together what was happening, my mind racing through every possible explanation. As I examined the photograph more closely, I noticed a hidden message scrawled on the back. "I'm always close." The chilling words sent a shiver down my spine. I quickly closed the box and tried to calm myself, but the paranoia was overwhelming. The idea that someone had been lurking around my apartment, watching my every move, was terrifying. My sense of security was shattered, and I felt completely alone, unsure of how to protect myself from this unseen threat. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, the power went out entirely, plunging the apartment into darkness. I fumbled for my phone to use as a flashlight, but before I could find it, I heard a loud bang from the living room. Panicked, I ran to the door to check the hallway again, but it was still empty. The noises continued, growing louder and closer. My heart raced as I realized someone, or something, was inside my apartment. The terror of being so vulnerable and powerless was almost too much to bear. In a desperate attempt to understand what was happening, I heard a familiar voice through the darkness. It was Emma. She had come back earlier than expected, and hearing the commotion, had been trying to get my attention. It turned out that she had seen the suspicious delivery and decided to come over to check on me. The realization that I had been so close to danger and that Emma had unknowingly been caught in the middle of it left me with a lingering sense of dread. The true identity of the threat remained unknown, but the unsettling experience left me questioning every aspect of my safety and trust in the seemingly ordinary world around me. The last delivery. It was one of those lazy Friday nights in the quiet suburb of Maplewood, just outside of Toronto. After a long week of balancing my job at a local tech firm and my studies at the University of Toronto, I was craving a quiet evening. I had just settled into my comfy couch, surrounded by my 2 cats, and was preparing to enjoy a movie marathon with some takeout from my favorite local diner, True Food. It was a routine that brought a sense of normalcy and comfort after the chaos of the week. I dialed in my order, looking forward to the simple pleasure of a greasy burger and fries. Around 45 minutes after placing my order, as I was halfway through a classic horror film, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but I answered out of curiosity. The voice on the other end was a little too cheerful and had a strange edge to it. The caller claimed to be from True Food and asked me to confirm my address. When I did, there was a brief, unsettling silence before the caller hung up abruptly. It felt odd, but I shrugged it off, thinking it was just a mix-up. Not long after the odd phone call, I heard a knock at the door. It was unusual for the delivery to arrive so soon, especially considering the strange call. When I opened the door, there was no delivery driver in sight, just a plain brown paper bag sitting on the doorstep. It was slightly damp, and the smell of food wafting from it was unusually pungent. I picked it up, feeling a chill run down my spine for reasons I couldn't quite place. I brought the bag inside and opened it, expecting to see my usual order. Instead, there was a mix of items I didn't recognize. A container of cold soup, a half-eaten sandwich, and a handwritten note that simply read, "Are you alone?" My heart raced as I realized this was not from True Food. I tried calling the restaurant, but the line was busy. Panic set in as I noticed the note was smeared with what looked like fingerprints. As I paced nervously around my living room, the lights began to flicker. I glanced out the window, but everything outside seemed normal. The suburban street was quiet and empty. My cat seemed unusually agitated, darting around and hiding under furniture. I tried to calm myself by rationalizing that it was just a power issue, but the flickering only added to my growing sense of unease. Suddenly, I saw a shadow pass by the window. My heart pounded as I peered through the blinds, but there was nothing there. I felt a knot in my stomach, realizing that someone might be lurking outside. My mind raced through possibilities. Was this some sick joke, or was someone actually watching me? I decided to lock all the doors and windows, hoping to deter any potential intruders. As I sat nervously on the couch, I noticed a strange noise coming from the kitchen, a low, rhythmic tapping. I went to investigate and found that the tapping was coming from the delivery bag on the counter. The bag seemed to be moving slightly, as if something inside was trying to get out. I hesitated before reaching for it, my hand trembling as I pulled out the remaining items, but there was nothing abnormal this time. On a hunch, I checked my phone again and found a new message from an unknown number. It was a photo of my house taken from the street, with a text that read, "I see you." My blood ran cold. I was now sure that someone was outside, watching me, but I had no idea who or why. I felt trapped and vulnerable. my mind racing to make sense of the situation. My paranoia reached a peak when I heard a soft knock on the living room window. I cautiously approached and looked outside, but the darkness made it hard to see clearly. Just then, the knock came again, louder this time. I could barely make out a shadowy figure standing just outside the window. My instincts screamed at me to get away from the window, and I quickly moved back, my heart racing. In a moment of desperation, I decided to call the police. I explained everything, and they assured me they would send an officer over. While I waited, I noticed something peculiar on my doorstep. A new note, which read, "You didn't see me, but I see you." My fear turned into dread as I realized that whoever was tormenting me was incredibly close, watching my every move. The police arrived within minutes, their flashing lights casting eerie shadows across my lawn. They conducted a thorough search of the area, but found nothing out of the ordinary. The officers reassured me, but their presence did little to calm my nerves. They took the notes and the delivery bag for evidence, but found no leads. The sense of dread lingered as they left, promising to keep an eye on my neighborhood. The rest of the night passed in a tense silence. I tried to sleep, but found myself constantly on edge, listening for any strange noises. The experience left a lasting impact on me. The feeling of being watched never completely faded, and I became hyper-aware of my surroundings. Even now, whenever I get a delivery, I can't shake the fear that someone might be lurking just outside, watching and waiting for their next move. The haunting delivery. It was a cold Saturday night in November, and I was huddled in my cozy suburban home in Maplewood, New Jersey. After a long week at work, all I wanted was to relax on the couch, watch a movie, and enjoy some comfort food. I reached for my phone and opened the food delivery app, my go-to for such indulgent evenings. I ordered a large pepperoni pizza from Tony's Pizzeria, a local favorite that had always delivered consistently. Little did I know, this would be a night that would forever change my perception of late-night convenience. As the clock ticked past midnight, I was starting to get impatient. The delivery time had passed and my pizza was nowhere in sight. I double-checked the app, only to find that the delivery was still marked as on its way. Annoyed but not overly concerned, I decided to wait a bit longer. Meanwhile, I could hear the distant hum of traffic from the nearby Route 22, a sound that usually provided a comforting background to my evenings, but tonight it felt oddly distant and surreal. Around 12:45 a.m., there was a soft but firm knock on my door. My first thought was that the delivery driver had arrived. I peered through the peephole but saw nothing but darkness. I called out, "Hello?" But there was no response. After a few more knocks, I cautiously opened the door, only to find an empty porch with no one in sight. There was no pizza, just a chilly breeze and the faint smell of diesel from a truck that seemed to have sped away. On the doorstep, I noticed a small, plain brown paper bag. It didn't have any branding or markings, but it was warm to the touch. My heart raced with a mix of anticipation and unease as I picked it up. I brought it inside, hoping it contained my pizza. To my surprise, it held a note and a single, unmarked box with no labels. The note was scribbled hastily. "Sorry for the delay. Hope you enjoy." I opened the box, only to find an assortment of cold, mismatched food items, something that clearly wasn't from Tony's. There were half-eaten fries, a few slices of an old pizza, and what looked like a smushed sandwich. My disappointment turned to concern as I realized this wasn't just a mix-up. It felt intentional. I could not shake the feeling that something was off. Just as I began to question my sanity, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, and the caller ID showed only New Jersey. Hesitantly, I answered. A voice on the other end, barely audible and distorted, asked if I was enjoying the food. I tried to respond, but the call ended abruptly. My pulse quickened, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Feeling increasingly uneasy, I decided to call Tony's Pizzeria to confirm if there had been any issues. To my shock, the person who answered the phone seemed unaware of any delivery that night. When I mentioned the odd bag and the strange call, the line went silent for a moment before they assured me they would look into it and hang up. The disconnection left me more unsettled than before. Unable to sleep, I wandered around my house, trying to shake off the anxiety. As I walked past my kitchen window, I noticed a dark figure standing at the edge of my driveway, just outside the pool of light cast by the street lamp. The figure was barely distinguishable but seemed to be watching my house. I squinted, but as soon as I tried to get a better look, the figure disappeared into the shadows. The following days were plagued with paranoia. I avoided answering the door and didn't make any late-night food orders. Each creak of my house or rustle outside felt amplified. I even went so far as to set up a security camera to monitor my front yard. Yet despite my precautions, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, as if that unsettling delivery had opened a door I couldn't close. A week later, I received a package from an anonymous sender. Inside was a recording device with a note that said, "I hope you're still enjoying your meals." Trembling, I played the recording, which revealed snippets of conversations from inside my house, including my voice from late that night. The realization that someone had been monitoring me was almost too much to bear. I went to the police, but they were unable to track down the sender or make any substantial progress. My once safe home now felt like a prison, and my sense of security was shattered. One night, after weeks of living in constant fear, I saw a shadowy figure in my driveway again. This time, I decided to confront it. Armed with a baseball bat, I stepped outside, only to find nothing but the quiet, empty street. Life eventually returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the fear never truly faded. The delivery and its aftermath left me questioning every stranger, every knock on my door. I moved to a new house, but even now, I sometimes catch myself glancing out the window at the slightest sound, forever haunted by that cold November night when a late-night craving turned into a nightmare. I can't escape.